All right, I just popped the cover off, the cap off the bearing. I just got the caliper, the whole thing kind of hanging up here off my jack shaft. Kind of a nice spot to hold it in place for you. Take a real small, little tiny screwdriver, little regular, and there's the cap. That's the back side of it. That's the front side. And just get underneath it. Get underneath the cap right on the inside, and then just kind of pry it off carefully, and it'll pop right off. And I'm actually pretty impressed to see that this bearing has literally no rust in it. I did this yearly on my Apex, same thing. Actually, it was a lot easier on the Apex to get at, but every time I popped the cover off on my Apex, the bottom was just full of rust. So I had to like spray it out, clean it all out real good with like WD-40, and then repack it with some bearing grease, and then put it back together. Now, that worked really well on the Apex because it was easy to do, and because I did it every year, the bearing lasted, 10,000 miles. I never replaced it. With this sled, from what I'm seeing, because of the design down here with, it seems to me like there's a big space here, and then there's that inside rubber cap, like a cover on the inside there with that shroud on the back side of the tunnel. So you got inside the back of the tunnel, these 3 bolts, they go through a shroud, and there's a nice big rubber cap with a seal on it. And then there's a space here, and then the bearing's way in here. So it must really not get too much nasty, snow, ice, moisture, all that stuff too close to it. Because by the looks of this bearing, after one season, I thought it was going to be all nasty inside, but looks pretty good. Now I can still clean it out and re-grease it. That's the great thing about this. And then I believe I'm going to take a punch, and I'm going to punch several areas of this seated part where the inner race seats on here on the shaft, and hopefully that'll bite on this nicely when I put it back together, and it'll avoid any future issue that some guys have seen. I haven't seen it, and mine's okay, but the sled's pretty new. So okay, so that's where we're at.